So, hi again. Let's start the Q&A with our speakers. Hi there.
Hi everyone.
Hello, hello.
So I will just show the question. I will read the question also, and then I will say which question is this. But guys, you can add some additional notes in case if it's not your question. You can discuss with your colleagues and be free there. So the first question is related to Kyle's speech. Is the Jamstack accessible?
Hey, that's a good question. Um, my answer to that is that the Jamstack is as accessible as you make it. Just like creating a website that's not on the Jamstack, you have to do your due diligence with making sure you're using semantic HTML, right? And making sure that like all buttons are properly labeled, that all CSS is there to make sure that hover and active states are there. There is something interesting with the Jamstack in particular, where a lot of times the Jamstack can sometimes act as a single page application. And so what that means is that when you change routes or when you click on links, the browser actually doesn't announce to screen readers that the page has changed. For some static site generators, for some Jamstack sites. So you want to just pay careful attention to route navigations and accessibility there. If you don't get route announcements, you can create one yourself using the ARIA Live attribute. But the short of the answer is yes, but it's as accessible as you make it.
Thanks for your answer. The next question is related to React Native. So this is Radoslav, Stankov. Sorry. Um, uh, this is Radoslav's related speech question. So should you use Expo?
So Expo is a great way to start. Like if you don't have much experience setting up a React app from scratch, you should definitely try Expo. But you at some point might decide to basically remove Expo from your website. So my suggestion is when you design your app, think of Expo as an external dependency that sometimes you would need to remove. Like the biggest problem with Expo is if you need some extension, which is like a native extension, Expo doesn't work very well. The benefits from Expo is that it has the whole package and you don't need to deal with a lot of the iOS stuff. So often what I suggest people doing is start with Expo, but design the app that, for example, if Expo breaks, I just can, remove Expo and just build on top of it.
Thanks for the answer. So the next question is a little general, but it's again really, it was there after your speech. So which navigation package to use? Probably all of you can talk about it, but this is related to Radoslav's speech.
Yeah, so I like the React Navigation Native, the one which I showcased in my talk. There is another one which is fine, but it's not very flexible, and you make quite hard decisions on top of it. You have to basically work around it to do a bit more of the dynamic stuff. And the React Navigation Native, I haven't had any issues with it, and it works quite well. So this is the one I would suggest.
Thanks again for the answer. The next question is for Charlie. Should all React applications be SPAs?
I can take a word on that. So I faced recently like a lot of startup, at least in Paris, because I'm not in the worldwide like US based, etc. It's a different way also of working sometimes, but start to use build React app, and for some very simple use case like doing dashboard, go for a full single page application with Apollo Cache, etc. And I feel like it's not always necessary. There is also like the micro front-end approach, and you can sometimes just keep like an old approach of just doing like widgeting and not going for the full SPA approach, which add a lot of complexity. Like I said, for example, in my previous, for example, if you do SPA, it's not very simple to know which version of your application is online because you rely on the will of a user to apply the version, etc. So it comes with a lot of complexity. I would love to get the feedback from you guys.
Thank you. So this one is also a generic question. What is the worst enemy of maintainable React? So maybe Charly, you can start, and after then Radoslav can add some details or add some notes. Then
yeah, so it's very opinionated for sure. I can see you smiling because of course there is no one answer for that, but I feel like definitely like bad component decomposition. I did like very big component that takes like that are very generic for no reason with like 50 props and 1,000 line. So this kind of readability kind of thing. So the contrary of micro optimization, the no optimization over time and just doing things at the same place. I would say state. For me, like it's every company I go, there is a lot of issues with state, and just sit down for a moment and think really about it and just know about like, oh, I need something, I'm gonna put here, and just look at the global picture.
anything to add?
I'll second that. That's the first thing that came to my mind as well. So I'll just do a +1 there.
Yeah, I can totally agree a lot of that. I think a lot of problems come from, I mean, the biggest one, in my opinion, is dependencies, but this is the second one. And this, I think, come from developers wanting to not repeat themselves, and often it's better to just copy a component's code and just change it where you need it instead of just adding another prop there. And we as developers are often trying to add more abstractions, just like another property here, another property there, then to step back and say, okay, is this actually two components? Can I just charge this feature in some other way? And this is, I think, something which creates a lot of mess over the long run, because you get like components with 20 props which interact in a weird way with each other.
Thank you. So the next question is related to Kyle's speech. Which static site generators do you use most?
That's a good question. As I mentioned in the talk, there's a wide array of static site generators that create Jamstack sites nowadays. There's Gatsby, there's Next, there's Nuxt, there's 11t, there's Redwood. It seems like there's a new one that comes out every few months. What I can say is I have learned a few of them. I've learned Gatsby, I've learned Next, I've learned 11t, to name a few. I haven't used all of them. But I have to say, one thing that is really good about all of them that I've found so far is that they all have really good documentation. I think the Jamstack really, like the Jamstack community really shines with accessibility and documentation practices. So it really makes it easy to pick up a new static site generator. But yeah, Next, 11t, Gatsby, those three have been ones that I've tried out, I've played with, I've used quite a bit. So
thank you. There's another question for Radoslav. Is React Native fast enough? Should I know the native platform?
Both answers are yes, the short version. Like React Native is fast enough, and if you follow like the good practices from React Native, for 90% of the times you can get there. The places where it's not fast enough, you can use native modules. And for the most business type application, it's fast enough. If you need something very custom, like for example, a good example, which I would say we have to build an app like that, don't React Native, is Pinterest. The Pinterest app has a lot of custom transitions between screen, a lot of animation, a lot of shadows, and they have done a lot of work, basically build their own engine in C++ for all of that. So if you need something like that, no. If you need, for example, a video editing app, React Native can be the Chrome and you just have the main screens. Should you know the native platform? In general, yes. Like you can try to be without the native platform. You can do it, you can have success, but you are basically banging your head against the wall in certain cases. And for example, a lot of those cases in iOS in particular would be Apple signing, putting to the App Store, or something which comes from the native platform that you need to work on. And it's good to know the native platform. You don't need to be an expert, but just knowing the underlyings of the system and how it's done, it's always very useful, and it should be done at some point.
I want to ask another question related to this one. When we shouldn't use React Native?
So, I mean, there is many cases where you shouldn't. Like, for example, if none of your team actually knows React Native is not a very good choice. If you have, like, for example, Swift developers and you just want to be on iOS, go for it. Or you have Kotlin developers on Android. There is cases where, for example, React Native is not very good for games, in my opinion. There is a lot better things for games. There isn't a lot of places that you won't use it. For example, one of the apps we built was a video app with a lot of play with the camera. That's also not very useful with React Native. So React Native is not very good if you need to have a lot of like custom, very high frequency animations, flows, or if you depend or the other place where React Native is not very good is, for example, on iOS, if you integrate deeply into the iOS, like creating a widget, creating a watch extension. Like there is no React Native for that working. And if you need, for example, to do something with their sensors and the main of your app is something around the sensors, you can use the React Native, but it's kind of a hack. You just use it as a UI layer. So those are the cases I wouldn't use React Native. Also, again, the biggest question is your team. What are your team expertise? If you have somebody who's really good at Flutter, go with Flutter. If you don't have, don't go.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. Next question is for Charly. Can you tell us more about monitoring React applications?
Yes. So there is plenty of different solutions. The most well-known, so there is monitoring and error tracking or exception tracking. For exception tracking, there is like Sentry, there is a rollbar, this kind of solution, but it's not really monitoring. For more advanced, you can have like a LogRocket, but LogRocket is more like for products. And okay, sorry, the question was changing. And so basically, I recently like realized like a year ago that when you want to apply like monitoring as we do on the back end, on the front end, there is not that much solutions right now. The only one I know is there is two approaches. Either you do yourself the monitoring, and you do everything, and you push in the Kibana stack, which is cool if you have like a lot of engineer and you have like a sysops DevOps team. But there is also Datadog, which is very good. So I don't have any incentive for Datadog, full disclosure, but really their product is, the real user monitoring is very, very good. It tracks everything, logging, exception, error, gives you like almost kind of an APM experience. So having like a full introspection on what's happening on the front end. So I don't know, what can I do? What as an ending word, I would say like monitoring is not, I feel like it's not that much used in the front end world right now. And I feel like it's a bit of a shame because it brings a lot of very, very, very good practice at the operation scale when you run like a big application with thousands of users, to avoid like having bugs ending up in the hands of the users. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of monitoring. I don't know what you think, guys, about this. Maybe a few words.
Thanks for your answer. One note, actually, guys, if you have any other questions, please write them in the chat, so we will also include them. During Charlie's speech, I accidentally showed another question, and probably Kyle noticed that it's for him. Are all Jamstack sites static?
That's a good question. So yes, I would say all Jamstack sites are static, especially in the sense that they're going to be hosted statically. They are comprised of HTML and JavaScript files that a static site host serves when a user makes a request to your website. So essentially, yeah, they're going to be static. However, that doesn't mean that they're not created from dynamic sources. I say that as in, for example, a Jamstack site's probably going to pull from APIs, such as the WordPress API or some sort of content management systems API, or maybe even like from markup that's in a repo somewhere. So they are static in the sense that they're going to be served statically, but a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, they're going to be based off of dynamic resources.
Thank you. The next question is again general question, but this is for Radoslav. After Radoslav's talk, what should people consider when making architecture for an app?
I mean, they should always consider what the app is. And the way they should think about it is, okay, what is this app for? How is this app going to change? Who's going to work on this app? What are the requirements needed for this app? Is it going to be a single screen app? Like, is it something simple? The way, like, if I can go a bit broader, if you think around and go more to the website, like I see two types of websites when you make like an app, and this is like, I call them tall and long. It's basically, for example, Trello is a long one. You have one screen and all the functionalities is this one big screen, and all the other screens are just sprinkles. They're not very important. Or you have an app which is like Facebook or Product Hunt, where you have many pages, and the complexity between the pages is quite similar. So, and the apps all go to some of the spectrum, and you have to consider how this thing is going to grow. Because if I'm building Trello, I'm going to use, for example, something for state management, and I'm not using this for if it's not that. And those are the things you should answer about. The second set of question is, what are the common things that needs to be done in this application? What kind of common feature is going to do? Like in the apps I work, we create a lot of new pages. So I have invested a lot in the tooling creating these new pages. But for example, if I build a Trello, a lot of my work will be working with the store and making the changes to the store, and the way to test the store states very easy. So those are, I think, the things that should be considered when we think about architecture in general.
Thanks for your answer. Guys, are there any things you didn't have time to cover in your talk? Then you can be free and discuss them here with our colleagues. In short. Okay, if there's no any other questions, then thank you again. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. It was amazing to listen all your speeches, talks, since we had lots of new things, since we get new knowledge from you. Thanks for everything. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.